Assisi.
Thank you.
Well, we also have our opening prayer with Elaine Stewart for our opening prayer today.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Let's close our eyes. Let's elevate our thoughts to God. Beautiful morning. Let's once more be thankful for the day, the opportunity of being here, the opportunity of having really place to stay at night, our food, everything that we have in life, even the small things that sometimes we don't pay attention to, how important it is. So let's also ask to have a very good morning, learning a lot, and that we can also apply some of this knowledge that we have. Also, please stay with our special guest, also this knowledge that
Hi, everyone. Believe nothing of what they said to you. Lower your expectations a little bit. Right? But I'm very excited to be here with you today to share a little bit about the joy that it is to be together. I always tell people that Spiritism has given me a new perspective in the way I look at the world, and that was a gift. That really changed my life. But what I did not expect was that I would get a second gift, which is the gift of getting to know people that I would not have met were it not for Spiritism. So I'm really joyful and thrilled to be here with you because you guys are definitely a good group. And I always have a lot of fun when I'm with you or with members of your group in different places in different states. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today. So thank you for having me. I promise you that in the next 7 or 8 hours together that we're going to spend. No? Okay. Too early? Okay. I hope that the next 45 minutes or so, we can have a conversation a little bit about raising kids in this time and age. But I think it's also a good conversation, not only for parents and for kids, but for us in general, just to kind of rethink our role in this world in these difficult times. Does that make sense? I really enjoy interaction and questions, so I am going to try to kind of hold my tongue a little bit and not speak for the whole time so that we have some time at the end to do questions and responses and kind of comments, because I do think that Spiritism was born out of questions, out of discovery, out of interaction. So I always enjoy that part very much. But sometimes I get carried away. So I'm going to turn my timer on here so I can actually, kind of keep myself to it. Let's see if it actually works today. Great. All right. So since we are in Houston, I figured an apt title for us is Launching Rockets. Right? NASA's down the stream-ish. Right? And ish, right? And it's, I think, an apt metaphor to what it is to be a parent or a caretaker or somebody who is around kids in this new generation, because I think we can also agree that life has been a little bit challenging for these past 5 to 10 years. I mean, it has always been challenging, period. But we had a pandemic, we have, economic challenges, we have war, now many wars breaking out in different places. There's even wars we don't know about going on. A lot of anxiety, intolerance, a lot of hatred and angst out there in the world. So I do think that we can think a little bit about what is it that our role is here on earth today. And what is it that we can do to kind of help not only our present time, but to build a better tomorrow through making sure we're paying attention to our kids, right? Because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to move this earth forward, this world forward. And we want to be really, really smart and strategic about that, because our hope is, because now we know that there is reincarnation, that when we come back as their children or their children's children, they're also prepared to raise us well so that we can then launch into the future. I will also try to limit the number of bad jokes I will make. I cannot guarantee that. I just want to put that in this, but I will try. I will do my best. So I'm going to start by showing you a little video. You might not be able to hear very well because Genius over here forgot to bring a speaker, but I think you get a sense. But I think that can frame a little bit what I mean for the topic today. You guys ready? Let's do this.
Discovery is now running off its 3 onboard fuel cells. Coming up on a go for auto sequence start. And we have a go for auto sequence start. Discovery's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 17 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, start, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond. Discovery's 3 engines now back to 67% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttles and breaks through the sound barrier. Discovery will eventually 3.5 miles in altitude, 1.5 miles downrange.
Thank you, Internet. Well, all right. Well, you get the drift. What you did not see here is that, there's 2 tanks that also eject and then going, and it's a very exciting moment. But I thought that this would be a metaphor for parenthood. Because if you harken back to our landing on the moon, right, years ago, what we experienced was a decade long of planning by thousands of people, putting millions of hours of work to get to that point where they were able to bring 2 million different parts together to build the rocket and launch it successfully to the moon. For us to stay at the moon for 22 hours. Oh yeah, I forgot the small detail. So it's a lot of work. For a lot of work for a job that sometimes seems like it's not that great, but it is. Because that opened up a series of possibilities. It sparked our dreams. It helped us learn new things so that we can continue to grow. And I think that's sort of what it is to raise kids too. It could be a lot harder actually than launching a rocket. But I think there's some lessons that we can take from that about our own selves and about what is our role in this world nowadays that we can kind of take from that, right? And I'm going to try to make sure that in the next couple of minutes, we talk about this and lay the foundation for conversations we can have later amongst ourselves here, amongst family or friends or whatever it is, because I do think it's a key conversation that we should be asking ourselves constantly. How do we best position ourselves and others to be productive members of society, not only for now, but for the future, right? Because everybody likes a list or a top 5 or a top 10. Came up with 5 tips. Obviously, there's 4, 5, a lot more, but I figured you might not be willing to listen to me for more than 40 minutes. So we'll keep it to 5, right? All right, first one is, it's important to understand that when it comes to kids, right, and launches, it's really about their journey. It's not about our journey. When we are having kids, oftentimes we think about, ooh, this is how my childhood was like. And this is what I would like for them. But it's also true that times have changed and things are different. So we are not the astronauts. Our kids are. We're mission control. Our job, our role, is to really get them pointed in the right direction and give them the right resources so that they can find their own journey. And I know that is really hard sometimes, and we do this without even thinking, but they are growing up in a world that is vastly different than the one that we grew up in. In many cases, they might be growing up in different cities, different countries than the ones that we were raised in. And I think we can agree that internet and everything else that's out there has changed things quite significantly. So being and existing in today's world, it's very different than what we experience. And we also know, because we have been studying about spirituality and reincarnation for a while together, that the earth also evolves. Just like we evolve through reincarnation and through many lives, and we get to work on different things and grow our understanding and practice of good and wisdom and intelligence, earth is also changing. And we also know that we're in a very key period of our spiritual history, so to say, because we have to move forward. We have been a little bit, I don't want to call us spiritual slackers, but as a group, we're sort of, lagging a little bit, and now we have to move forward. So our friends on the other side who are wiser than us are saying, you got to move. So we are going to get a bunch of you in there, and you guys are going to have to figure this stuff out quickly. So let's push forward a little bit. So we have a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives having to live together, and it doesn't always work out very, very nicely. But the good news is that we have lots of wonderful souls who are beginning to reincarnate with us too, to help us move forward. But when you have to move progress quickly, when you have to catch up, when you have to cram for that test, right, there's always friction. There's always tension, which means that that's what we are going to expect if we really want to be clear with ourselves. So we are living in this moment where we've got to move forward. And our friends, our spiritual friends, are pushing us forward. So all these things are popping up because we got to settle them. We got to solve these things. We got to learn them if we are really going to move forward. So it's extra difficult right now to be alive, and it's extra difficult to be a kid. But that's okay, because we also know that God is kind and fair and would not put us in a place where we are not able to withstand the challenges of the moment. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair, and God has to be fair by definition, right? And it wouldn't put us in a place that we cannot also add something to the mix. So we want to also shift our view spiritually to understand that we're not only able to deal with all the challenges of this world, but we have a role to play in making it better. And I personally think that one great way of doing it is to make sure that we are aware of our spiritual selves and our spiritual world, that we are more than our physical body, because it helps us focus on the fact that each one has their own journey. So when we are talking about kids and about other people in general and relationships, we have to understand that our journey is different than their journey. And that our role, when we are parents and caregivers, is to be mission control. I always tell my kids, my job is not to love you. That's my privilege. My job is to keep you safe and prepare you for the world. So I will make decisions sometimes that might not be what you like. But my job is to make sure that when you grow up, when you launch, you know how to fly the plane or the rocket in the skies. And teens and kids, if you're listening, your parents' job is not to be your friend. They are way more than that. Because friends sometimes go along with what you want, even though they might not think it's right for you. Parents are friends plus. They have a responsibility to tell you that what you're doing sometimes is not what you really should be doing for the future. And that's a big shift, because sometimes parents are so busy and we are so tired and we feel that we may not have enough time with our kids, and our desire is to give them things and do things so that they can feel happy. And that's wonderful. But our primary job is to line them up and make sure that all the systems are go for their own launch, because they will launch. They will leave the house. We will pass from this physical body, and we will not be able to be here with our kids. So we will not be able to hold them forever. So what is it that we are doing to make sure that they know how to fly the plane? That they know how to make good decisions on the fly, right? So remember this. Your journey was great, but it's not their journey. Their journey is different. Don't compare. The whole idea of like, when I was a kid, I had to walk 20 miles barefoot to get water, right? But when I was a kid, I went to school, and I got all that. Like, things are different. You just have to kind of wipe that clean and understand that the time requires different approaches, right? So that's one thing that we want to keep in mind. The other thing that we want to also share, which is very similar, is that everyone has a different launch. So because we have their journey, everybody has a different experience. They all have a different childhood, a different growing up process, a different evolutionary process. And that makes sense because we are unique, right? That means that if you really wanted to be a football player when you're in high school, Dad, doesn't mean that your kid should be or play football. Mom, if you really wanted to be an athlete or a ballerina, doesn't mean that your daughter should be one either. Because everybody has a different process of growing up. We know for a fact that you are prepared to face your launch, because as we talked about, when we think about the concept of God, we know that God is all powerful, all kind, all loving, right? All knowing. And so we have been placed in the best possible conditions to learn the things that we need to learn to be able to develop that into which only us can develop into. That is to say, you have the family, the experiences, the upbringing, and the opportunities to face the challenges you need to grow, to become who you've got to be. And who you've got to be is different than the person that's sitting next to you, because they have had different experiences growing up in this life and in all previous lives as well. Because all those previous lives, all those incarnations and challenges you have faced before were different, and they prepared you to be here in this moment right now. So although it's nice to understand how people grew up and what they experience, that's the tip of the iceberg. You don't know their past incarnations. You don't know their challenges. All we see sometimes is that clip, like 2 minutes clip of how the launch happened, but we don't see how mission control struggled with things and how astronauts had to make changes on the fly. We don't see that. As a matter of fact, in social media, all we see is the 2-minute clip. Have you noticed how everybody is always happy in social media? Things I've noticed in social media. People are always happy, they're always looking good, and they always travel business class on airplanes. I've never seen somebody take a picture and say, check out my middle seat, right? Right, have you? Right? So it's interesting for us to understand that we have different launches. We cannot compare our launches, if we are a parent or a caregiver, to that of our children and teens. You cannot compare your launch with your colleague, because it's completely different. You live different challenges, different things, but you were prepared to face what you're facing today. Otherwise, you would not be placed here by God. So your challenges are different than everybody else. There is some commonality, of course. We all need to learn, we need acceptance, we need to be loved, we need to be understood, we want to do well, and all those things are important. But it is a different place and time. If you are raised in Los Angeles, it's a different experience than being raised in Arkansas. If you are being raised in Montana, it might be a different experience than being raised in Miami, Florida, right? If you're being raised in the US, it might be a different experience than being raised in, Malay in Africa, or Brazil or Europe. So there are all these circumstances that have led us to learn specific things that are different than each other, which means we should be a little bit tolerant of each other too. And that is so hard. Because my challenges are not your challenges, and truth is, we're all dealing with challenges and problems that nobody else knows about. We just don't tell them. We don't put that on social media. Mission Control doesn't share with the world all the challenges and preparations that they go through when they have to launch a rocket. All we see is those 2 minutes of glorious launch. But again, there were millions of hours, thousands of people, with millions of different pieces that had to be built into a rocket for those 4 or 5 people to experience being in the moon or close to the moon, because not everybody actually stepped on the moon on the first trip, right? For 22 hours. It's a lot of work. But in our society today, for some reason, which maybe we leave that for another time, we only want to see the clip. And so a different launch is something all of us experience. And as a matter of fact, these launches are really practices of us becoming independent and being able to make our own decisions. Because we want to empower the astronauts, that are us, our children, to be able to understand what's going on, but also to change if necessary. To be apt travelers. That's what we are. We too are astronauts from a spiritual perspective. Right? We're launched into life, and now we have to know how to navigate things. The metaphor can be unpacked in different ways. But if we have different launches, then we have to understand that people are different. And I think that's lacking a little bit in our world nowadays. We hear somebody for 10 seconds or 15 seconds, and if they don't think exactly alike us, we shut them down. We call them names, we disregard them, we cancel them, whatever you want to do. And then you ask yourselves, if you only hang out with people that think and act just like you, how can you possibly launch a rocket? You need all kinds of talents and all kinds of things to be able to really get the job done in terms of preparing yourself for the future. You need engineers, you need psychologists to prepare the astronauts, you need people who are going to make the spacesuits, you need people who fuel the rocket, right? You need people who carry and bring food. You need all kinds of thousands of people to be able to accomplish that. And in many different ways, raising kids, yes, it is the parents' responsibility, but there is a communal role that we also play by modeling through example what it is to have the right behavior and attitude and how to face life. And that's really, really tricky because we don't do that very much. But maybe we should, right? But before I bore you to death with this one, let's go to the other one so I have a chance to bore you to death with the other one. So there's something else that I think is important for us to think about. How do we do that then? Well, astronauts and mission control have a mission goal. Yeah. Yeah.
So about the launch and in your knowledge, who is actually up to determine when the launch?
That's mission control and the astronauts together. Are the astronauts ready to go? Is the mission control ready to release them? Right? It's a combination. And sometimes he has to go. And sometimes the astronauts are not ready to go. So that's an interesting conversation to be had about, are all systems go? Right? That's a difficult piece. But it has to be figured out. Sometimes the astronauts think they're not ready, but mission controls knows they're ready. Get on that rocket, my friend. The rocket's going to go. Right? And sometimes mission control wants to put the kids out and the astronauts are not ready. And that's on mission control. They got to figure that out, right? But that's got to be a conversation, and that's why I think sharing the mission goals is so important. The astronauts just don't show up one day and say, all right, you're scheduled for the 4 o'clock to the moon, right? Suit up, get in the rocket, and then you find the task of things that you need to do. You need to press this button, you need to pull this lever, press this button. That's not how it works. You got to share the mission goals. Why don't we do that with our kids too? Are we talking to them about what is it that we expect of them and why? Did the astronauts show up one day and ask and say, and we're told, hey, we're going to go to the moon, and they just said, okay, let's do it. They probably asked, why? Why the moon? How? What's happening? Why are we doing this? Well, we are going to try to go to the moon because we've never been there. It's an incredible opportunity for us to learn lots of things about how the space works and what moon is like, how gravity works. We're going to carry out all the scientific experiments. We're going to try to figure out how to launch rockets. We're going to learn a ton. As a matter of fact, we have learned lots from all the scientific exploration. Did you know, for example, that the initial control on the module that landed on the moon is less sophisticated in terms of circuitry than your microwave at home today? You have a fancier microwave. I imagine all of us probably have a microwave, than the technology that was used to literally land on the moon, on the module. So there's a lot of calculations done by hand with computers-ish, right, to make all the stuff figured out in the 1960s. So we learned a lot, and today we're able to have a lot of the technologies in comfort because of the discoveries that we have made that pile on, and in many different ways, that's similar to what we do as a spirit too. We learn from one life to the next. And what we learn here would then apply to the next mission, so to speak. But while we are on the mission, sometimes we as parents tell people what to do or not to do. And that is tough, because sometimes kids hear a lot of no's. You can't do that. Don't do this. Don't put your hand on the stove. Don't cross the street without looking both ways. But you can't possibly tell all the no's out there in the world. You just can't tell them all the things that they shouldn't do. There isn't enough time in the day on your life to do that. But in our desire to make sure they're prepared and they are ready, we focus on that. But what if we share with them not rules, but principles? And we told them, hey, I want you to keep your body safe at all times. I love you so very much. It's very important to me that you keep your body safe. And that means don't cross the street. Don't put your hand on the stove. But there are other situations too, and I want you to learn how to make sure you keep yourself safe at all times, because you need to grow. And you're going to become an adult, and you're going to learn how to make your own decisions. And for us who are spiritists or spiritualists or believe in something great, why aren't we talking to them about spirituality too? Because you are here on earth to learn and grow. And this is one life that you have, but you have many lives, and there is a God. And part of that growing process as a child is to understand that my job is to prepare you for this life and for many others, by giving you the skills and the knowledge and keeping you safe so that you can find your grounding to move forward. And therefore, this also means that our role towards each other is to also provide that guidance and that support for other grown-ups or not, because, let's be honest, they're children of all ages. I think you know what I mean, right? I have many friends who are over 40, but are not as mature as my 10-year-old. It happens, right? I always tell people that growing old is mandatory and growing up is optional, right? But we have the responsibility to each other, and we have to put the lens on that we're not here just for this life. We are here for many lifetimes. And so are we focused on what the mission is? What is the mission? Do you know what your mission is in terms of what you want to do this life and what is that you're here to learn? Something that we should ask ourselves. Because if we are not careful, life happens, and then we worry about making mortgage, having a job, getting promoted, getting a bigger pool, getting a new car, and all these things are fine and they're nice, right? But that's not the reason to be here, right? My goal in life is not to hit 5 million followers and become an influencer. And by the way, what kind of term, a title is that? Influencer, right? Remember when you had a job and you were good at that job, and like, I am an engineer, I'm a mechanic. Oh, I know what you do, right? And what does an influencer do? Gets more followers. Your job is to be famous so that you can be famous. You see a slightly different challenge here with the proposition, right? That's a desirable career these days, right? What do you want to do? Oh, that means like I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I just want to be famous. What are you adding to the world? I know what a mechanic does and how he adds to the world. I'm not saying influencers do not. I'm saying, do we have clarity on what is it that we want to do and what we aspire to be? Have we been talking about the fact that immediate gratification right now, it's not the purpose of learning? Okay. There has been a study done, decades ago out of UCLA, I believe, and there was a study with kids. I thought it was fascinating. And what they did was they put these kids in this room, and they told the kids, here's a piece of chocolate. You can have your piece of chocolate now. Or if you're able to wait for 10 minutes, I will give you 2 pieces of chocolate. And then they walked out of the room, and they let the kids stay there for 5 or 10 minutes, which is a long time when you're a kid and you have a piece of chocolate in front of you. Let's be honest. Or not a kid and have a piece of chocolate, right? Whichever it is. And then they watched, right? And as you know, some kids were like, chocolate, right? And the other ones waited. And what they did is they tracked those kids over time, and like 20 years later, they saw where they are in life. And they found out that there was actually a correlation between the kids who waited to eat their chocolate, right? They were happier, they performed better, so to speak. It's not to say, the point of the whole experiment was not to tell you that you're either going to make it or not if you eat the chocolate. Is that you can train yourself to delay immediate gratification for a greater purpose. And to be honest with you, I think that as a society, we have been eating your chocolate. We have not been waiting for the second piece of chocolate, right? So can we share these things with our children, with ourselves, and say, the reason why we're here, yes, we can have fun too, but we're not here on vacation. We weren't born to be on vacation. We were born to learn. So it's only normal that you're going to find challenges. But if we are able to help our kids and ourselves find some principles, some guiding principles to help us navigate things, we don't need rules for everything. We just need a couple of guiding principles. Keep yourself safe, be kind to others, be considerate, right? And you can come up with your own and make sure that you are adding to the world. Everything else, you've got the compass. You can figure it out any map. Right? But along the way, Houston, we have a problem. Or 2 or 3 or 5,000. We are going to have problems. Things are going to happen. And that is normal. Do you think that when NASA was launching rockets and they found a problem, they just said, all right, no problem. We have a problem, okay, cancel the mission, turn the rocket around, come back down. It doesn't happen that way. You got to figure it out, right? So we expect problems because things will change. But if you have guiding principles, then you can kind of redirect yourself as opposed to just following rules. You can think on your feet, right? And with kids, that's also a very important thing because we are going to have problems, right? Kids are growing, especially when they're teenagers. Their brain is developing, their hormones are kicking in, flooding massively, behavior is changing, smells are also changing, right? All kinds of things, bodies are changing, right? All kinds of things are changing very fast, and that's complex for a child to handle all that at once. But do we talk to them about this? Do we have that conversation with them? So we know, for instance, that physiologically our brain develops slowly over time. And I am not no neurologist, but I think there's an interesting thing. They call it sometimes the rock brain, that you get stuck on things. But if you think that your brain, like if you look for the back, for your spine, and you go all the way to the front, so this is the part that kind of regulates instinct, breathing, and everything else. It's like the reptile brain, like the beginning, like of our physical evolution. And then there's all the things, hearing, speaking, and so forth. And here in front is the last part to develop. Imagine that is like this. This is the last part to develop. This is called the frontal cortex. Do you know what the frontal cortex is responsible for? Understanding cause and consequence. It's the last thing to develop physically on our brains. You know when the frontal cortex is sort of technically like developed? Not always. Technically, in your 20s, right? But like you said, sir, very wisely, 84 sometimes not enough, right? So it's like they have all these kids making bad decisions. Why? Part of that, right? But part of like we don't know how to handle that, right? And so it's important for us to understand that we're going to face problems and we're going to have to figure things out. As a matter of fact, I would invite you to think behavior as an indicator. When a kid is having behavior that is different than what you're expecting, don't read that as defiance. Read that as a telling of a need. If I am acting up and I'm pouting because you gave my brother more Nintendo time than I had, right? It's partially about the Nintendo time. But the need there is, I am feeling less than my brother, and you're giving him special treatment. And I have that feeling, I have the need for attention and validation because my body's changing crazy, my brain is developing at a crazy pace, I do not know how to handle myself or my communication skills because I don't even have them. I mean, adults don't know how to communicate. Again, to your point, sir, 48, right? So you have to read behavior as a teller, as an indicator of need. So think about it. What is the need behind this behavior? And teens, that's for you too. When you're feeling angry and frustrated or whatever it is and you want to lash out, if you can, take a deep breath and think about, what is it that I really need here? Funny enough, we are not good at telling each other what we need. Truth is, our schooling has never taught us to do that either. When we were growing up, we were taught about intellectual things, intellective things. We learned math, geometry, physics. We never heard, did you learn about conflict resolution at your school? If you're a parent? No. These things are not the things you learn there, right? As a matter of fact, many of us, teens, surprise to you, newsflash, many grown-ups are not figured out, and we have issues with our parents. Truth, right? And guess what? We forget, too, that our parents had it even rougher than we do. We forget that, too. And we are grown-ups. We forget that our parents were doing the best they could, and they had less social-emotional training than we did. Miracle we all survived. It's not surprising that we also think that sometimes, this youth, bunch of snowflakes, all want to be in touch with their feelings. It's natural progression. Not being a snowflake, but being in touch with your feelings, right? So I grew up okay. In my time, we didn't use helmets when we were riding bikes. I grew up okay. Did you? Did we? Are we okay right now out there? Let's call a spade, right? The world could be better. We agree, right? So our experiences change. So behavior is an indicator. So what is it that people are trying to do? Can we tell people what our need is? When your wife or your husband comes to you and say, why are you out again in that spiritist group on Sundays when we could be home? What they're really saying is, hey, I need time with you. They're not saying, don't go to group or don't go play soccer or don't go to the book club. They're saying, I'm feeling like I am second fiddle. if you share that differently, the message would have sink in more clearly. You could have said, hey, you've been going to that activity a lot, and I really like to spend time with you because I miss you. That registers differently, right? But we don't often do that, but we could. In the meantime, let's agree to meet halfway. We try to do a better need, communicating our needs, and we all have needs for security, affection, love, acceptance, right? Appreciation. We all have these needs. It's like the unspoken secret. We don't talk about it, but we do. We all want to be recognized. We all want to be loved. That's why we go on social media and post all those things, because if we post the right thing, people are going to click on it. That means we're loved, we're good, we're accepted. I'm not going to go over there and put my major emotional breakdown and my anxiety on social media. What are people going to think? Right? And then we feed into the snowball of only thinking that people are happy all the time. I guarantee you, people are not happy all the time. In my professional career, one of the things I do, I'm an executive coach, and I talk to a lot of CEOs and a lot of successful people, right? Who don't often get feedback from their people. True feedback, unvarnished feedback, because there's always somebody who wants something from them or is angling for promotion or whatever it is. And you would be surprised how so many people who are rich, famous, and powerful are not as happy as it seems. And if being rich, being beautiful, and being famous doesn't bring happiness, and we know that for a fact because we have a lot of people who are rich, famous, and beautiful. I'm neither of those. I wish I were some of them. They're not happy. Some of them die by suicide. So are we putting our focus on different things? Is that really what's going to make us happy? Right? So we got to talk about this behavior thing as an indicator. We have to learn behavior. We have to learn how to read behavior better than we do. And we have to learn how to communicate better with each other. So think about it. Why is it that people are behaving in a certain way? It's not because they want to be a pain in our butt. It's because they need something and they don't know how to articulate. So if you are a parent or caregiver or caretaker or a grown-up having a challenge with a coworker, think about what is their need. Oh, they just want to be a pain. Maybe they only want to be a pain, but they want to be a pain for a reason. Because there's something that they need they're not getting. And if you are young and you're being grown up, if you are just trying to lash out, try to figure out what is it that I actually need. Maybe it's not about the time at a Nintendo. Maybe it's not about driving the car, right, on the weekend. Maybe it's about feeling the independence, feeling like I have control over my life, right? Try to articulate what is the core of what you need and how is it that other people can help you get there. Now, just by asking, you can make great progress. Doesn't mean that it always happens because we're different, we have different launches and different needs, but at least it starts a frank conversation about what is it that's important and that we really need. And you might be the parent say, I get that's what you want and what you need, but this not be the best thing for you. Again, because my job is to tell you the things that you need to hear now so that somebody who doesn't like you doesn't have to tell you in a way that's not going to be as pleasant when you grow up. Because that's what true friends do. True friends tell you things that you're not doing right in a polite and kind way because you know they love you. And it's way better to hear from them than to hear from somebody else who's going to call you out on your stuff that they're right about in ways that are less than nice because they don't know you. They don't care about you. So going in and making behavior as an indication as opposed to just a thing can help us very much so. And what else? What else can we also think here? Well, I think the fifth piece that we want to talk about is about failure. Let's fail fast and fail forward. Did you know, for instance, that many organizations tell you that if you're not failing, you're not moving fast enough? Google, for instance, for a while, had some employees who were let go because they were not failing fast enough. Because some people wanted to be such at the cutting edge of something that if you're not trying and innovating things, if you're too cautious, then you're not moving that forward and you're not learning anything and you do not belong in that particular division. Fascinating, isn't it? Because what we have been told is don't make any mistakes. But the truth is, failure is the only thing that will get you there. Because you cannot learn anything unless you try and take risks. And you will make mistakes. But somehow, we have put it in our minds that we should not let anybody see the mistakes we make. You only learn by being discomfortable. For something new to happen, for you to learn, you have to take a step out of what you're doing and be willing to take a step of something that is unknown. Otherwise, all you do is sit home, watch Netflix, and eat bonbons. Both good things to do. Netflix and bonbons, high on my list. However, not your meaning of life, probably. If it is, we should talk. Right? Because there's more to it. But you have to go out a little bit and try something new. You're learning a new language, you've got to try with your broken language skills until you make yourself understood, because that's what practice does. You are learning a new job, you got to go out there, do an internship, and ask questions and put yourself out there, because that's how you learn. You're out in a relationship, you've got to put yourself out there and say, this is what I want. Is that what you want? Do you want to go out with me? What do you think about a date, coffee, whatever the cool people say these days? I don't know, I'm not cool. There's two kinds of people, I think. There's hip people and hip replacement people. I'm closer to the hip replacement than the hip, right? But if you're hip, you know the right thing to do. But the point is, you've got to put yourself out there. You only learn by failure. Success only gets you recognition. But you don't learn a lot from success. What you really learn from is failure. So do you have the courage to fail? Fail fast. Fail forward so that you learn new things. Fail safely. Fail responsibly and learn. That's what we're here to do on earth too. We reincarnate, we're born, we try new things, we make mistakes, we get back on that horse and we go. And we have as many chances as we need to. Sometimes we come back many times working on the same problem. Because we haven't learned that yet. If you have a situation happening in your life that is repeating itself, chances are you haven't learned the lesson underneath it. So ask yourselves, when life brings you a challenge, what is it that I'm supposed to learn? As an immortal spirit that I am, what is it that I'm supposed to learn here? What is the skill that I will take from here that I can use in this life and in many other lives? Chances are it's not going to be how to influence people. It might be how to develop skills that give you flexibility, ability to listen, coordinate, make sense, bring people together, figure problems out. But we have to begin to look at things differently and understand that what we have in front of us is not always a great clip of the work that it takes to actually do the job. When we see the rocket launching majestically and beautifully, and if we had a speaker and crank the sound all the way, you can feel the vibration of all that power going on. That's just a tiny little clip of all the work that went into it. And so we have to also understand what is it that we are doing as human beings to change that perspective. Because we're so stuck on the here now. We're eating those chocolates that are put in front of us without understanding that if we just put a little bit of work and be thoughtful about this and try different things and give it a new effort, we can have 2 chocolates tomorrow. And what are the 2 chocolates? Is it a bigger house, a bigger car? Maybe. But maybe it's the satisfaction and happiness of being happy with who you are. There's nothing more beautiful and more sexy than being happy with who you are. Sometimes when people are happy with who they are, they just exude that elegance, that sexiness, may I say, for lack of a better word, right? It's just good to be in sync with the universe. We have moments of that sometimes, I think. We're not there all the time, but to do the right thing, to help others, to be happy with who we are, that is golden. What if we could feel like that all the time? Imagine if we did not have to worry about what other people thought of us. And if they just accept us how we were, and we accept people how they are. What kind of world would that be? That would be amazing. We can have amazing conversations about things that really matter to us, openly, without being worried about getting hurt or people having ulterior motives. Because the math works out, right? Think about this. If you're just thinking about yourself and you feel like you're the only one out there who's got to watch out for yourself, then it's 1 against 7 billion or 8 billion. I don't know what the count of the current people on Earth nowadays is, because it keeps changing, right? But if we start to watch out for each other, then it's 7 billion helping you. I think the math works out well. So can we do that? Can we watch out for each other? Can we remind each other, especially in this community, that we are immortal spirits who are here to launch into progress and learning? Learning of an intellective kind, learning of an emotional kind for sure, and learning of a spiritual kind, both of them together. Can we transform our perspective in such a way as that we focus on what we really want to do, which we'll find out what it is. Each one of us has their own launch, their own mission, their own goals. But once you know what to do, and it doesn't have to be something grandiose. You don't have to come and change the world. You are changing the world every day by being a good parent, by being a good human, by being a good friend, by doing your job well and giving a contribution to society. All those things are true. All those things are sorely needed. And all those things are extremely important. Whatever it is that you do, do it well. Are you an accountant? Do it well. Are you a scientist? Do it well. Are you a manager? Do it well. Do it kindly. And by doing that, the ripple effect goes on. And you might affect thousands of lives. How many people do you interact with from the beginning of your life to the end of it? If you are an upstanding citizen, you may impact positively, even if a short period of time, millions of people. That's our legacy. Isn't that incredible? Sometimes people might come to you and say, oh, I was down one day and you said that thing and you really helped me, thank you. And sometimes you're like, oh, I don't even remember what I said. But because you were kind in that moment, I think all of us have had that experience before, you might have helped somebody. Isn't that wonderful? Right? But sometimes we forget. We forget that we are in this process. So we forget that we're immortal spirits. We feel alone. We feel forgotten sometimes. We're not in touch with our needs. We haven't been able to articulate them. We haven't shared with others what is it that we expect of them and why we expect that of them. Because sometimes we haven't thought about what is it that we expect of ourselves and why. Because we are running so fast that we haven't slowed down to think about this. So make the time to reflect. I oftentimes tell people, half jokingly, that there are days that I spend more time brushing my teeth, 2 minutes every day, technically, than thinking about myself as an immortal being. There's some times that I have a day, I think about work, I wake up worried, and I don't even remember that I'm an immortal spirit created by God, unique in my experiences so far, that have come to this time and place by the grace of God, by experiences in past lives and this life, prepared uniquely to face the challenges that I'm facing right now so that I can make a contribution to the world. Because when you think about it, challenges from a material perspective are a pain in the butt, if I may say so. But when you take a step spiritually and think about spiritually, that's what we're here for. We're here to solve problems. We're here to learn, to fail, to do things differently, to learn how to change our behavior and our attitude towards things. So when challenges come, if we had our spiritual perspective right, we would say, ooh, What is it that I'm supposed to learn from this? And wow, what a nice compliment from the spiritual world. Because God would never give you a challenge that is beyond your ability to solve it. Because that would be kind of mean. God cannot, by definition, be mean. Even us, parents, don't give stuff for our kids to fail. Right? God, who is incredibly superior in all kinds of ways that we cannot even fathom, in kindness and glory and all those wonderful things that are hard to grasp. So when a problem comes, means you've got this. Now, let's also be honest and let's pretend, let's call ourselves friends here, right? Friends tell each other things that we see. Let's also be saying sometimes the answer to the problems that we see in the world are not the answers that we would like. Sometimes we can't solve all the problems we're facing the way we want to, but there is a solution. So maybe you can ask for help from somebody else. Maybe you can see things differently, but there's going to be a solution to the challenges you see because that's what we're here for. And guess what happens after you solve that problem? A bigger one's going to come. Yay! No, not so much, right? When we think about materially, it's again? I want to be on a beach with my cocktail with a little umbrella on it. For some reason, the little umbrella makes it more delicious. I don't know why, but it does. I just want to do that and put my feet up. It's okay for you to do that for a little bit. But you are here to solve challenges, right? Peace of mind is not having problems, I think. Peace of mind is being okay and knowing how to navigate the challenges you have. Because you can be okay in the middle of chaos. Jesus was in the middle of chaos, and he was very okay. He taught us how to navigate all this chaos and all the situation. He showed us by example. Of course, there are moments that we go ups and downs, right? But can you focus on that truth that now you know about, that you are an immortal spirit created by God with infinite potential that will overcome absolutely everything that ever comes your way? Spoiler alert, you have lived many lives. You have lived all the challenges you face, and you've survived 100% of your bad days. You're bulletproof, spiritually speaking. There's nothing that can stop you in the grand scheme of things. Might not happen in this lifetime, but it will happen. That ought to be a little bit reassuring, right? So as you launch into the future, think about the immortal spirit that you are and that others around you are as well. Focus your mission control efforts into what is it that we need to do to make sure that we attune to that reality that we are spiritual beings first and physical beings second. We're not a body that has a soul. We are a soul that is temporarily using a body for learning purposes. That's a subtle distinction there, right? Jesus, to call in the big guns, was spiritually aware all the time. So from the beginning, he knew what he wanted to do, what he was going to accomplish, how he's going to do it. And he thought about that. If there's one great example that I take away from his passage here on earth with us is, we are going to overcome life. Because he did it and came back to tell us about it. We too will live beyond this physical body. So what are the things that we are packing for that journey? What are the things that an astronaut needs to pack? They don't need lots of t-shirts, hair dryer. I certainly don't need one. But you get my drift? They carry the absolute essential. Not a lot of weight, not a lot of encumbrances. Only what you need for that trip. And what you need for that journey is here, and it's here. Everything else is details. What you wear, what you drive, where you live, what you do for a living. Nice, but not essential. Are you a good human being, and are you improving? Yes to those two answers, because you are a good human being, because you are created by God. And yes, you are improving even if you don't feel like it. That's enough. So let's launch into the future, remembering that the connections that we make and the refocusing that we need to do go with us forever. Because the love that we build and the efforts that we do carry on with us everywhere we go. And when you feel lonely, because sometimes we feel lonely when we're astronauts out there, we think we're alone, we think mission control is very far away. Just remember this. The people that you love, they don't stop loving you just because they're not close to you. When you travel to a different country, you miss them, but they're still there. And when they die, spoiler alert, there's no death, they're still alive. And they still love you. Why is it that we think and forget this? And we think that they no longer exist. We know they do. Right? Do you stop loving those who have passed away? If you have them in your family, chances are we do, right? Do you think, therefore, that they stop loving you? No. Little tiny secret, you've lived other lives, which means you've had other parents, mothers, fathers, friends, colleagues, pets, uncles, aunts, co-workers that also love you. How many lives had you lived before? Who knows, but a lot. You didn't always have the same mother and same father. So there's hundreds, thousands of souls out there who love you at every single moment. And we just forgot about that. You have an army of love at all times during your existence, supporting you and moving you forward with their love. But for some reason, we forget that and we feel lonely. But don't, because love is forever. Good news, that number is only going to continue to grow, because the more lives you have, the more friends you make. The more friends you make, the more bonds you create. The more bonds you create, the more affinity you have with time. Affinity becomes love and respect and mutual everything that's good in the world. And that number of people who care about you and watch out for you only grows. So let's be that for each other today. Let's take the time to strengthen these bonds and really focus on what matters, so that we can launch not only our kids, but ourselves into the future, remembering that our reality is primarily spiritual. And then there'll be nothing that you cannot do. It might just not come at the speed that you want, but it will come. I am reminded of a beautiful sentence from Paul, the apostle, that said, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" If you have God at your back and all this love, how can you possibly ultimately fail? You can't. Sorry to say, you're destined for success. It's just about the speed at which you will get there. So take some of that pressure off of yourself, of raising your kids, of the world out there, and just launch yourself into happiness, into the future. Just remember that this is what you're here for. You're here to be happy, to grow, and to learn, to face some challenges, but those challenges will come with developing skills. And in time, if you continue to remind yourself of that, that'll become easier and second nature, and life becomes kinder and shorter in terms of trials and tribulations. And then I hold my tongue for a little bit, because I've been talking at you for a while. But that's basically the message today. Launch yourself into the future. Launch yourself into the sense that you're a spiritual being way more than you imagine. And let's be kind to each other and remind ourselves that each one of us has that different launch, has that different experience. That's their journey. Let's respect people's journey. Let's understand and try to understand people's behavior as an expression of need. And understand that we have to change a plan every once in a while. There are problems. Let's try things, make amends, and move forward. And in no time, I'm sure the life will present itself in a much kinder and nicer way. That's my message today. And I hope that you take that to heart. I hope that's helpful. And if you have questions or comments, right, do we still have time? Yeah. Yeah? Hi.
E aí a mãe falava assim, quando o filho deu 18 anos, resolveu trabalhando, resolveu sair de casa, né? E ela escreveu de uma maneira muito ocupada, porque teve uma parte na frase, era que ela dizia que ela fez estava uma mulher da doutora, se não me engano. E aí, como nós, dona e pai também, esse momento de deixar o foguete subir, né? Mas, por outro lado, eu fico pensando que me dou conta que eu já sou muito egoísta, porque eu acho que isso é um dos sentimentos da gente como pai, né? Eles têm muita dificuldade de aprender a aceitar. O pedaço de pizza, o melhor pedaço também é nosso. O bolo de chocolate maravilhoso também é mais seu. Vai fazer compras, as compras não são mais para você. Enfim, então, eu acho que essa sua, sua tarefa é importante porque faz refletir realmente, né? E como o Espiritismo ele traz essa trabalho moral, né? Uma das enfermidades nossas é o egoísmo, né? Como aceitar isso, entender isso, não é fácil. Confesso que não é fácil. Não estou preparado para deixar meus foguetes aí fora.
So I'm going to rephrase that slightly in English, right? So it's hard for parents to let go of kids. You know, I think parenthood in many different ways is an exercise of stepping aside for somebody else. You no longer have the things that you can do that you used to do. Weekends don't exist anymore when you're a parent for yourself, right? You got to take your kids to do all these kinds of things in school. You learn to give a lot of yourself, and then it's hard also, funny enough, paradoxically, to let them go, to launch them into the world. It is very hard because we've grown attached to those little terrorists, right? They have held us hostage for like years. And we have suffered abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. And then when you're about to break down, they smile at you and they just reset everything like, right? I think it's got to be like a built-in instinctual thing that God did, right? Not to drive us crazy. By the way, I think there's a forgetfulness too. Like we forget how hard it is and we decide to have a second one, right? It's got to be like a built-in thing. But the truth is we love our children and we want the best for them. And that is normal, natural, and wonderful. Like I said, it's not my job to love my child, my children. It's my privilege, right? And as we are more aware of who we are spiritually, we know that they are temporarily our children. They have been entrusted to us so that we can launch them into their full being. Come with their own tendencies, right? We know they're siblings that come from the same DNA code. Twins, exact copy. But psychically, right, psychologically, they're different. So we know that there's a spirit in there that has had multiple incarnations and experiences before. And that is the difficult piece for us as parents, to go back to that piece and say, our kids are not ours. We're stewards of their development. And our job is to point them in the best way. And that means help them curb some of the inclinations that they have that might not be as healthy, they have developed over time, because we all have them. And help them, give them the opportunity to grow in other ways. And that is a mighty important task, to be entrusted with that for somebody else. But that's one that we take lovingly because it's so wonderful to see those little smiles, to see that body growing. Like I have a 10-year-old, like all of a sudden he's like this tall. How could he be? He used to fit like when he was first born, put his head here, his little feet were dangling over. I could carry him like that. And now he's a walking, like stumbling thing because he like puppy legs, like he doesn't know how tall he is. But he's like this tall. It's like a human almost, you know? But there were little terrorist ones, but we love them. So it's hard to go. But once we realize that we are mortal spirits, then I think that becomes a little bit easier, because inside that child, there's an immortal spirit that needs to have some guidance for its own good. And so I invite us to look at children. This is difficult. Not as cutely adorable little things. They are that too. But in there might be a wise spirit or a difficult learning spirit. But they are spirits nevertheless. And we've got to treat their education as such. Because if we just give things, we're not teaching them anything. Let's give of ourselves, give them experiences, give them guiding principles, giving them something so that they can do that by themselves. When they grow up, they can make the best things. And what a wonderful thing. And we have so many wonderful messages from mothers and fathers who come back from the other side to channel, right? And Heaven and Hell has a couple of those too, and tell us how they feel about what they've done or not. And it's not surprising sometimes that some parents really wish they had prepared their kids better for the world. Because it will be on our conscience if we don't do a good job of that, right? So think as children as an immortal spirit. Becomes a little bit easier to understand them too, right? And just be prepared because that time will come, one way or another. Either you will let them launch into the world, or you will pass from this life, and then you will not be able to immediately be in their orbit. But are they ready? Are we ready for each other? Right? But if we do a good job, they will launch into as rockets, but they will keep talking to mission control. It doesn't mean that you send a rocket into space and say, goodbye, so long, sucker, right? Radio off, right? It doesn't happen, right? And it's the most wonderful thing to have a healthy relationship with your child who has become an adult, and even see your child, I'm not there, but I think it's an incredible thing to have a child become a parent and bring wonderful humans into the world and do a great job of doing that too. What a beautiful world we have, right? And so there's hope. There's good things on it too. Right?
Yeah, thank you. But a couple of questions I have very quick. The books you kindly give to our bookstore is sold out. So if anyone wants to buy your book, where they can find it? I'll wait to Damascus. It's a very entertaining reading. If someone wants to get the book, where they can get it?
Thank you for the plug, sir. I appreciate that. So we have a book called Our Road to Damascus, which is a symbolic interpretation of the journey that the Apostle Paul undertook when he got converted. That's the Christian term. But the truth is, I think it was an incredible personal transformation, right? Somebody who had a job, was on the way to do something, and during a business trip, in a way, he realized that what he was doing was not what should be done, and he changes his life completely. And so we examined 7 different examples of that journey of how do we also change our lives and how change comes about. If you're interested in that, I would love for you to pick up the book. You can find it in every bookstore. They might not have like physically available at Barnes & Nobles or whatever it is, but if you ask them, they will order it for you. But you can also go to Amazon and get it in hardcover, paperback, audiobook, or Kindle, or whatever it is, and that will be wonderful. And if I can make a shameless ask, if you have done that, if you can do a little rating or like on Amazon, that would be wonderful, because that's so helpful to get the word out about the book. My book is my 3rd child, right? I have 2 children and 1 paper child, a couple coming, but on the way, paper child. I am done with the physical children for now. Love them, but for now, right? For now. Maybe I'll buy 1 ready-made in the future, but good for now. They're giving me enough love, put it this way. But thank you for letting me know for that.
I have another question. What is the Spiritist Radar, and how can people subscribe to it?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So one of the things we're trying to do too is to get the word out and give people resources in English about Spiritism, because most of the time we don't find a lot. So we created a while back something called the Spiritist Institute that does different efforts with different things. And one of the things we do is called the Spiritist Radar. It's a monthly newsletter that you can sign up, and you get some news about things that are happening in the world, all in English, or new books, new articles, new magazines, and new things. So if you're interested, you can always hit me up later, but you just go to spiritistinstitute.org, and over there you'll find the sign-up place. And we only send 1 email a month, so we won't spam you. Or if you want to, like Telegram or WhatsApp channels, we have that, and then we send things like little by little. So you can choose how you want to interact with that. But the idea is to get people to know about wonderful resources that might be there that we don't always know. Huh? Oh, it's very expensive. You may not be able to afford it. $0, right? But I talk it up because, if it sounds expensive, people go, ooh, it must be good, right? But no, it's a labor of love. Everything we do is free. We have been so gracious, receiving so much wisdom and knowledge through Spiritism, that the idea is to give back. So thank you for that space. If you have questions, let me know, but we would love for you to sign up, for you to volunteer, to know what's out there. And thank you for having me as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so very much.